What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Crossover U College Hoops Talk podcast brought to you right here on the Crossover channel. My name's Kanaye, and I'm joined with Josh. Today, we're going to talk a little bit about some of the winners and the losers and a bunch of other stuff regarding the transfer portal this offseason in college basketball in 2025. It's been really crazy so far. I think the number was around 2,500 players that ended up entering their names into the transfer portal this time around this season. And again, it's just crazy the landscape of college basketball right now with so many guys going to so many different places. It's really tough to keep up with, but it does make for a lot of content, which we can put out, which is what we are bringing you guys today. So like I mentioned, I think we're going to start it off with some of our portal winners and losers. But before we get into that, if you like this podcast or anything else you see on this channel, please engage with our videos in any way you can, whether it's liking the video, subscribing to our channel, or just telling other people about it. It really does help being able to get our videos out to a larger audience. So let's get it started. I'll throw out portal winner first. I feel like one of the ones that just immediately comes to mind is Louisville. Of course, just the guys they brought in, I think are going to play really, really well under Pat Kelsey next year. Ryan Conwell, amazing shot maker, arguably one of the best shooters in the portal in this cycle. You add Isaac McNeely, another capable shooter, shot, again, 40% shooter from three. Really good defender, of course, come from that UVA program that's super in on how they play defense. So you know he's going to bring a lot of defense. And I forget the kid from Kennesaw State that they're also bringing in, but he's going to be really good. I forget the name. Yeah, he's going to be great next year, I think. And they're bringing back, I mean, it's not about what they're bringing back, but combined with the guys they are bringing back, they're going to be really good in the ACC next year. Definitely give Duke a run for their money.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree with you. Louisville is back. We're so happy to have this great team. And talk about a rivalry, because Kentucky's doing just the same thing. Year two, Mark Pope is throwing just as good as year one, honestly. I get the team is also very new, but we saw how it worked last year. I think the class is not as good necessarily. I still kind of feel really nice about how that old squad did, but Jalan Love, Denzel Aberdeen, Jaden Quannens, there's still some spots left. You have some freshmen coming in. You have Trent Noe, who's likely going to take a leap going into his sophomore year. I think that in all reality, there's still so much opportunity for Kentucky, and the SEC is wide open this year, given the scenarios that we're looking at right now. So you want a good rivalry, and you want a good SEC team, I think Kentucky just has everything for it right now. They're definitely a winner in my book.
Yeah, no, I mean, when you have $20 million for your NIL budget, you're probably going to be one of the winners in the portal. It's just crazy that number. I believe it is close to 20 million. It might be 18, might be 22. But again, it's just ridiculous. And just to talk a little bit more about the Louisville-Kentucky rivalry, I think a lot of people said it was back this past year. I don't know if I would necessarily say it was back this past season, but you started to, okay, this is a game worth paying attention to. I mean, that game at Rupp Arena was really solid. And it is back now, just with the rosters these two programs are going to have next year. I'm really excited to see Mark Pope and Pat Kelsey go at it with their X's and O's, combined with just the crazy amount of shot making they have with the guys on their rosters. But my next portal winner, a little bit on the fence about it. This is all kind of pending the decision Yaxel Landenberg makes, but it's Michigan. It's hard to ignore Yaxel Landenberg, just how good of a player I think he is going to be if he does return to college. But I know he is heavily considering staying in the NBA draft. That's his main focus right now. He came out and said that. So that is definitely going to be a situation that we continue to monitor here at the Crossover U Pod. But, on top of that, they bring in Morez Johnson, Daymera, and Ellie Cadeau obviously is going to need to take a little bit of a leap. I know he's kind of some people close to him in some of his camp have come out and said, UNC maybe just wasn't the right fit for him in terms of his play style. But I am really interested to see how Dusty May is able to continue to develop Ellie Cadeau and if he is able to kind of take that next step in trying to be a top flight point guard next year.
Definitely. Once again, do think that there are some opportunities for breakout seasons in Cadeau, Morez Johnson, and Ade as well. I think that the young talent that we are seeing Dusty May bring in is so nice. I do wonder as well, Yaxel, I think the team will still be good regardless of whether he's there, but Dusty May works with centers and power forwards really well. He loves his big men, and knowing that Golden and Wolf are not going to be there, he needs a good replacement. Yaxel is a great replacement for, honestly, both of those guys, and Ade can be that two-tower matchup that, worked so well last year. If he leaves, I think the team goes down maybe a couple spots. They're probably still a top 5 team in the Big Ten, but I'm not that annoyed if I'm a Michigan fan. But he is the number one recruit in the portal. So
Right.
I still think, regardless of how we do it, it's a win that they even got him this early, regardless if he chooses to transfer or not. Another school that I really think is working well what they have for transfers is Auburn. They picked up Elijah Freeman from D2, which we'll talk about later. Keyshawn Hall. There's still a lot out there at the table too. I mean, obviously Auburn had a late start given their Final Four appearance, but you know how Bruce Pearl does this stuff. We kind of get that, Baker-Mazara is out there still. He might come back, he might not. We're losing Thahad, we're losing Johnny Broom, so there is going to be some form of regress, but I don't think the regression is that bad. It's not looking horrible, and Auburn should still be
Yeah.
competitive this year, without a doubt.
And I mean, they're getting Keyshawn Hall too, reigning leading scorer in the Big 12. So he's going to be really, really good in Auburn next year, I think. My next portal winner is Iowa. I know people kind of don't like throwing out teams like this where a coach leaves and goes to another school and brings some of his players over, just in terms of it's tough to have them on lists of best fits for players transferring, just considering that they're following their coach. But I mean, it really is hard to ignore just how good Bennett Sturts was in the tournament and for Drake last year. I mean, really, just I've heard people say, it's tough to argue that when you watch him, it's almost like you're watching a video game player. Just with the shot making he brings, and I think their backcourt's going to be really dangerous next year between him and Brendan Housen, a really under talked about guy in terms of portal ads this cycle. Brendan Housen, Ben Sturts, between those two in the backcourt, the shooting they're going to bring is just ridiculous, and they're going to be knocking down threes at an elite pace and rate next year. Really excited to see how they play out in Iowa City next year. But I mean, on top of that, they've added Tavion Banks, Isaiah Howard, and I think they're solid gets. I know he's brought over some guys from Drake last year, who again you are a little bit concerned just considering that they came from the D2 level to Drake, and we'll see how they play at the high major level now. But I think Iowa's going to be a really fun team to watch next year.
I would like to see it. I get it as a Big Ten guy. You want to see the best for a team like that, but Iowa hasn't been good in quite a while, I'll admit. And without McCaffrey, you kind of wonder where they're going to go. But
right,
McCollum is producing what he needs to produce, and I'm really happy for that. And we'll see how Bennett Sturts matches up against true Power 5 players.
right.
I mean, he did well in the tournament against Missouri, so that's a great sign. And the rest of the portal they brought in is, I'd say, pretty solid. But let's talk about some losers for a bit. I think there's honestly a lot more losers that we can really focus on, but we kept it to 5 to keep the winners fair with it. Big loser for us is Memphis. Obviously, losing PJ Haggerty like that is just such a rough loss. And I guess also losing Danny Danger is not really the best thing either. He definitely fit a really good role having that Power 5 experience at Illinois in 24. I don't really know where Memphis goes from here. They do have some opportunities in bringing in new players, but if Haggerty truly does leave, and I don't think Memphis has the money to pay what Haggerty is looking for right now, then Memphis is not going to look anything good. I don't know if they're even going to make a tournament at this point.
Yeah, and it really is unfortunate because I don't think. Well, I know Memphis does not have the NIL budget that a lot of people would assume that they have, and just with the number that PJ Haggerty is demanding in the portal, you almost do question why Penny Hardaway doesn't just pledge $1 million or maybe even $2 million of his own money, just considering how much he's made in not only his NBA career but as a coach at Memphis. Really, this is the guy who kind of saved your job as a coach at your school, and I just think it's really tough that you lose a player of that caliber who's probably going to be making, again, a lot of money in NIL with what he's demanding. And I know he does have demands in terms of like how he wants the team to kind of be ran at whatever school he ends up at. But again, yeah, you lose a player of that caliber. I know Dane Danger's returning, so that's good for them. And there's a whole controversy that surrounded Dane Danger with that too. But yeah, I mean, Penny Hardaway needed to do more in the portal. He hasn't really done much, if anything, so far. So I am curious to see how he continues to attack the portal this cycle. But I think another loser for me is definitely Baylor. This is a team that has no returning players up to my knowledge. And I mean, you got to wonder what Scott Drew is doing. He's got to make some moves fast. You lose Jeremy Roach to graduation. Rob Wright's now at BYU. Langston Love's gone. Celestine's gone as well. I mean, you got to make some moves. It's so late in the portal cycle to have not made a significant move up to this point that you really don't think Baylor is going to be in a great position to win at all next year in the Big 12, just considering how good the Big 12 is probably going to be once again next season. But yeah, I don't know what Scott Drew is doing out in Waco. He needs to wake up.
No, I definitely agree. I will say the portal class he brought in isn't horrible, but no returning talent. And keep in mind, he is a
Yeah.
long-term coach. He won a natty within the past 5 years. This is a coach who doesn't lose all of his players. This is such an unknown and just unreal type of experience as a longtime coach, losing your entire team like that. I feel like regardless what you do, it's so hard to build back. Like, I get it that it happens all the time with new coaches coming in, but long-term coaches,
Right.
I think that's the biggest thing to really focus on, because it is a nice class. There are some nice players like Skillings from Cincinnati. I think he definitely fit a good role as a main starter, but I just don't really know what they do. I do wish Drew the best. I love seeing Baylor as a top Big
Yeah.
12 team, but
Of course. Of
my
course.
they haven't even made the Sweet 16 since that natty run. Drew kind of needs to get on something if he really wants to go back to those glory days of just making it far at this point. That's really the only goal I think he should have until he really sees a good team on the board. But I'll throw another big name in there, Georgia Tech. I get it that they haven't really been in the news recently for losing or gaining or having a good team regardless, but you feel like there's kind of a point in time where Georgia Tech should be producing, and they have a lot of players, but they just lost a lot recently. They lost Duncan Powell. They lost Nathan George. They haven't really brought in anybody at all, to my knowledge. And this is still a big school with a lot of NIL money on them. They can definitely invest if they want to. The ACC is looking very good next year, and you kind of just wonder what's going on. Like, it's very odd. It's very odd, but also at the same time, I feel like Georgia Tech just hasn't been run well. So maybe this is just a sign of just how bad they've been in terms of just running their programs.
Yeah, I definitely hear you out there. I'm sticking in the Big 12 with my next portal loser. It's Arizona State. Bobby Hurley's on the hot seat at this point. I think it's definitely safe to say that. Just considering he had a really solid recruiting class in terms of what he had going into this past season with Jaden Quaidance and Joe Saint-On, but both those guys are gone now. I believe they only returned one player that scored a point from last season, which is just insane. And I know he's had tough luck with losing a lot of his incoming freshmen, just with everything that went down NIL wise. That documentary is supposed to happen, the Hard Knock style thing, and that getting canceled and NIL promises not being met with the program to its players. I mean, Bobby Hurley needs to wake up. The seat's getting really, really hot in temp, and he needs to wake up. I mean, he needs to add somebody because, I mean, Arizona State, they're going to be another bottom feeder in the Big 12 this past year, like they were this past year, I should say. Next year, I don't really see anything changing. Unless he does make a big move, and it's got to be soon because players are starting to commit. The players are starting to commit to the schools where they want to go, and he's running out of options here.
Definitely. It definitely is a really rough place because Hurley was expected to be so well off considering his freshman class, which was a lot better than I think it really should have been now looking back on it from this year. And it definitely didn't. It didn't float at all. I don't know how Bobby handles the portal. I don't know if he's ever been good at it in the past, but Arizona State hasn't been to the tournament in almost 3 years now. It's starting to become a big issue, and yeah, hot seat's hot there. He might be on the hottest seat walking into this year right now, without a doubt. But I'll probably throw a little bit of shade over to the Big East actually and talk about both Marquette and Nova. Marquette hasn't recruited anybody. I know Marquette doesn't really touch it. Smart's never been a guy to talk with the portal and get guys from that. But this is the year you got to start doing that. Even hard stalwart guys like Painter and Sampson, like they're reaching into the portal, and you got to do it. You've lost so many guys. Cam Jones is just not like you. I get you can't replace a guy like Cam Jones on his caliber, but what else do you have? I feel like I really don't know if he expects his freshman talent that he's bringing in, which is not that bad, but just not on the level that it would be if he wants to compete for the Big East again. It's nowhere near where it needs to be. He needs to touch the portal. And then Nova, I mean, I get it, Willard still needs time, but he really dissed a lot of people off in that move to Maryland, which is why he only brought a single transfer from his original school, which that doesn't work. That just does not work for you. And I think if anything else, he hasn't brought anybody else on top of that, maybe a few players here and there that we can name if he wanted to, but time's running out. There's not a lot of top players that are open or left. And Nova has a lot of NIL money. They can push a lot of that into the field and gather but Willard has to do it now, and really only now, because every other team's going to want these guys too.
Right. Yeah. I mean, again, the two schools in the Big East that really haven't made any significant moves. Marquette hasn't made a move, and it's just they're going to struggle a lot if they don't change that because you're going to be competing with teams like um, St. John's and UConn, who are towards the upper echelon around the country in terms of NIL budgets. And those schools are bringing in top flight guys every year. Georgetown even has a really good roster. Providence has made some solid moves in the portal. And it's just such a tough league, especially once you get into conference play, to have success, at least sustained from the start of league play to the end of it. And yeah, if you don't have any top flight players, then it's tough to win. Yeah, that's just not the Big East. It's everywhere across the country. But I think that does take care of everything we have in terms of our portal winners and losers this offseason. And I think we are going to, if I'm not mistaken, be getting into some of our sleeper picks in the portal this past offseason. Guys who maybe are getting the attention they deserve. Josh has some guys who have already committed to some schools. I have some who haven't committed yet. But again, just guys that we're going to be names we're going to be throwing out of players who have a chance to make a really big leap at their new destination, whether it's decided already or still maybe just enter the portal and still visiting schools, still trying to make their decision. But guys who have a chance to break out and be some of the biggest stars in the nation next year. So Josh, I'll ask you first. Who's one of your picks?
I'm going with a hot pick and taking Abdi Bashir Jr. from Monmouth going to Kansas State. You want to talk about a walk-in bucket? This guy is a three-point shooting masterpiece. He excelled at Monmouth. He was by far one of the best mid-major players that I've ever seen play. He just dominated conference play, dominated playing against high majors as well. I think he would fit so well at Kansas State. Jerome Tang is known for having the hot hand when it comes to producing three-point shooters. Think about previous years with that. A lot of open roster space. Tang is in a bit of a hot seat too, so he has to make the good picks. And I think he's going to bloom. He is kind of a skinnier guard. I'm not really the biggest fan of that. But he's tall, and I think he has good defense as well. Like he would fit as the main starting player on a Power 5 squad that could arguably make a tournament at a high seed level. I'm definitely not against seeing a Bashir-led Kansas State in like the Sweet 16, for example. And I'm not calling it right now, but if it happens, you hear it here first.
Yeah, I mean, I love that pick from you. Microwave scorer, I think he really is going to mesh well with Jerome Tang, where Jerome Tang, I think Bashir is around like 6'7", but like you mentioned, a little bit of a skinnier guard. But Jerome Tang does well with guys who might be undersized. And I just don't think Bashir kind of has the ego that he kind of had to deal with Doug McDaniels this past year. I know Marquise Noel, maybe him and Tang didn't always get along, but when Jerome Tang is able to get along with his guards, they always end up playing really well. In terms of my pick, guy who just entered the portal 2 days ago, has not decided where he's going, played at UC Davis this past year, but it's Ty Johnson. I think this is a guy who has a chance to really break out and be a huge star at a high major school, maybe even one of the top elite programs next year. He averaged 21 points per game, 4 rebounds, 3 assists. In a year that elite point guards are really kind of hard to come by, and some large numbers are being thrown out at guys who maybe are good players, but nothing. I think he has a chance to really excel at like I mentioned, a high major school, maybe even ones towards the top, upper tier of college basketball. And, he's 6'3", so a little bit undersized, but I think he can definitely play well in the SEC, maybe even Big 12. I can definitely see him in the ACC as well. But again, a really good player that I think has a chance to break out and be a star next year.
Definitely. That's honestly a good choice. Another choice, which I mentioned a little earlier, is Elijah Freeman. He's from D2 Lincoln Memorial. He's the top D2 commit. Right now he's going to Auburn. Best choice for him to go to. Auburn made the great choice of picking him up. We know how Auburn is picking up lower level D2 and below type of guys. Chad Baker-Mazara is the best example, but he really knows how to get things going with Pearl. Just a bucket. I really think that he can be that type of wing scorer coming off the bench if he really needs to his first year, but if he stays long enough, which given the JUCO rules and other things, he can definitely fit, I think, more than 1 year, if I'm not wrong, with eligibility at Auburn. He can be a long-term scorer for this squad. It's Bruce Pearl. I feel like there's really nothing wrong with giving him a top shot at a great roster and a great squad. He's underrated. I'll tell you that as much. D2 players are always underrated, I think, regardless of how high they are put, and you got to give to Pearl for finding the gems.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, like you mentioned, Auburn, just their coaching staff, what they've done and being able to identify talent at lower levels of the sport is just really incredible what they've done so far. My next pick, guy who went to the portal about actually 2 days ago as well. Abba Miller played at FAU this past year, averaged around 11 points, 7 rebounds, almost 2 blocks a game. Guy who I'm sure every school in the country has contacted more than likely. He's a guy who really does have NBA upside, I believe. Just really the ideal game that you want. He's a guy who could get up and down the floor, step out, hit the three. Really good rim protector at 6'11". And I think there's a lot of untapped potential there. And I think if he is able to kind of go to a high major school where he fits a system, like I could really definitely see him playing well in Darian DeVries' system at Indiana. That's definitely a school that I think is on his radar as well. So that's going to be something to monitor. I think he would fit great there. But I think he has a chance to definitely break out. People have kind of been waiting on this breakout for a little while now. I believe he played at Florida State his freshman year. Not terrible numbers there, but I think people thought he was going to be a lot better than what he was coming from Spain to the United States to play college. FAU kind of made a little bit of a progression in terms of his all-around game, and I think he's only going to continue to do that if he finds the right coach and the right system.
I definitely agree. Once again, I haven't really heard the name Bobby Miller tossed around at all, but that's how you know there's an underrated player. I feel at least. And FAU does produce good talent. I think even past the Dusty May days, we're seeing FAU players that are being put out there portal-wise. He's definitely a guy. I feel like he could fit really well in any program. I like the choice for Indiana. I think he'd play good at a Big Ten school. Maybe SEC. We could see him follow like a John L. Davis type if he is that style of player. For my players as well, I'm keeping with two BYU guys, which I think have equally good opportunities at the new schools. That being Dallin Hall, who's going to UVA and starting a new program with Ryan Odom, and then Ken Catchings, who's going to Georgia to fill in for that large gaping hole that was happening with Georgia losing all their top players. I think both have really good shots of being the best player on each team's squad. Hall, I think, is probably the better player of these two, and UVA, with the legacy and just the transfer portal they brought in, which is I think a lot better than Georgia's, is looking like a possible tournament team. I feel like they're definitely in a better spot than they were last year or even 2 years ago now. Georgia will definitely get a huge boost from Catchings. I think the bag that he was given was pretty solid as well. It's definitely out there for Georgia, considering their money is mostly spent on football, but they're transitioning over with the other SEC schools. They have the experience, I think, from last year as well. I think both can just play big roles in both of their schools and probably be, like I said before, the best player on each respective team.
Yeah, and I mean, I love those two picks. Cannon Catchings especially. Another guy similar to Bashir, just flamethrower, score when he's hot. You saw the game he had against Baylor where he shot 100% from the field. It really helped them win, blow out Baylor in that game, I think. I think it was Baylor. But it is a little unfortunate to consider how stacked they are already. But if they are able to retain Catchings, how good BYU probably would have been the preseason #1 team if they were able to keep him. But my last pick in terms of guys who are sleepers, haven't committed anywhere yet. It's a little bit of a shot in the dark here, but I'm taking Jordan Ross from St. Mary. Not the greatest statistical season. I think he only had around 8 points per game this past year. But in the games that I did watch St. Mary's play, especially that game against Vanderbilt in the first round of the NCAA tournament, I think he had like around 14, 15 points. It was a huge reason why St. Mary's was able to hold on and win that game. And I definitely think he has a chance to be a really good player and take a step up, take a leap next year at a program that's outside the WCC. He's going to bring really solid defense with what St. Mary's does in their defensive schemes. And I definitely think that sometimes St. Mary's offense holds back a lot of their players' offensive capabilities. And I think that's going to allow Jordan Ross to step into a new program and be in a bigger scoring role.
Yeah, definitely an out there pick. I definitely do agree. But we've seen WCC players play super well at other conferences. I don't know where he'd fit. I feel like the Big East is not a good choice. Neither is the Big Ten.
Yeah,
physicality.
I think I could see him. I think I could see him at a Tennessee maybe, just because he brings that defensive upside. And I know Rick Barnes loves that. And yeah, I mean he's a player that's played in college already, so I think he'll bring some much needed experience to a Tennessee team that's going to be a little bit younger this year than they have been in the past.
He could fit a Sakai Ziegler role pretty quickly.
Yeah,
and Barnes would be down for that. I think he'd fit pretty well in the Big 12 to a good extent. He can definitely be one of those like clever guards that you see running around. I don't really know where in the Big 12 he commit. There's a lot of open roster space in many of the Texas schools. Otherwise, definitely a sneaky pick, to say the least.
Yeah. So I believe our next segment is going to revolve around just some rumors that are circulating around some of the top players that are left in the transfer portal. We'll also touch a little bit on guys who have committed and just, some questions we have just in terms of fit and maybe decision making wise and NIL. And we're just pretty much going to touch around. We'll be kind of pacing back and forth between topics in this next segment. But I think a good place to start. I made a video a few days back about PJ Haggerty and Chad Baker-Mazara, kind of the situation surrounding them. Really unique in terms of how their NIL deals and just what went on at their previous schools, kind of just the turmoil circulating those names kind of has continued to develop since they've entered the portal. Right now, we're going to pretty much focus on fit for the most part, I believe. I guess a good place to start is PJ Haggerty. I know off recording, I talked to Josh a lot about how I felt like PJ Haggerty would be a really good fit at Ole Miss to me. I think Chris Beard does well with guys that have the type of character that PJ Haggerty does, where maybe they come in with a little bit of turmoil, a little of extra baggage, but Chris Beard's done a good job in just kind of letting guys play. And they've already added AJ Storr, so they kind of have one of those guys already on the roster going to next season. I think you add PJ Haggerty, and that's a really, really dangerous backcourt. I think AJ Storr is going to be a lot better than what he was this past year at Kansas. Kind of get back to form what we saw at Wisconsin 2 years ago. You add PJ Haggerty into the fold, I think that's a really, really good backcourt that brings lots of size, a lot of shot making. PJ Haggerty, again, one of the best point guards this past year in the country. And I know he is kind of demanding some stuff in terms of how the team is ran, with him wanting to play the majority of his minutes at the point guard spot. I would have a tough time seeing a coach disagree with that all too much. But again, it is a little concerning when a player is making demands, not only with their NIL, how much they're going to be making money-wise, and of course, how they want the team to be ran.
Yeah, I can definitely see what you're talking about here. I mean, it really is up in the air with money as well. Like I said before, Haggerty has asked for $4 million, which
right.
is...
I just don't know if anyone has the money at this point to pay him. So
I know, and if they do, those teams don't really need him. Like Kentucky has the money. I know theoretically Texas Tech has the money, but I don't know if there really is a reason to throw the cash at them.
I mean, I've heard murmurs of St. John's maybe thinking of making a run for him, just trying to address how they really still don't have a true point guard, even with the Ian Jackson signing. But at this point, I think St. John's has already spent so much. I don't know how much they're willing to go on top of what they've already spent. And again, that's kind of getting to a point where you have a lot of cooks in the kitchen and it might not mesh all too well.
Yeah, I mean, he's also just asking for a point guard spot, like as a starter.
Right.
I don't really know. I really don't know to think about for that.
I mean, I could definitely see a middle of the pack school. I mean, at this point in the portal cycle, like we've talked about already, a lot of guys have already committed places. Teams are running out of options. They're running out of their NIL budget. I think there could be a school kind of middle of the pack. Maybe there's a coach on the hot seat, maybe like a Bobby Hurley even, where they say, hey, I'm on the hot seat right now. I need to have a good year. Maybe I'll go ahead and pledge $1 million of my own money to combine with their NIL budget to go get PJ Haggerty in hopes of having a much better year than what they did the previous season and try to make the tournament, save their job in a way where they get maybe, say, a $20 million extension. I'd say that's a really good investment making in terms of just pledging some of your own money to go and get a guy the caliber of PJ Haggerty. But again, I think not only are schools getting desperate in terms of players left in the portal, but they're running out of their money too. And I just don't know that PJ Haggerty will get the money that he is kind of demanding right now.
I really don't think that him or anybody asking over $2 million, by the way, is getting money right now.
I don't think he gets 4. I think he gets 3. I think he gets a lot close to what Rob Wright and Donovan Dent got.
Definitely. Another big question that Kanaye also brought up, but I think is also a great choice of topic, is Denzel Aberdeen, which we kind of mentioned before. You know, he was honestly supposed to be a top 2, maybe 3-minute starter at Florida. By the way, national team, if you didn't remember correctly. And he commits to Kentucky. He does get a bag, but not a full-time starter. Might be a 6-man, might be one of your late starters now. Like, you're trading 30 minutes to 20 minutes. I feel like that's kind of a problem, if anything. What do you really think? Is he just chasing a bag, a ring? What's going on with him?
I honestly don't like the move at all, if I'm being quite frank. Like you mentioned, he is making more at Kentucky. I think the number's around $2 million, 2.1, 2.2, somewhere in that realm. But you need to take into account, too, he needs to pay his agency. a portion of that, a certain percent of it. And he also has income tax that he needs to factor in now that he's playing in Kentucky. And when you take both of those factors into account, he's probably making a lot closer to 1.3, 1.4 million. And it's still a lot of money, but when you consider what he probably would have made coming back to Florida, probably would have been around 1 million, 1.1. And it's really not all that different than what he would have made if he just stayed in Gainesville for another year. Just again, like you just talked about, I mean, he probably would have been a guy who's playing 30 minutes a night at minimum, I would think, next to Xavier Lee, potentially as a starter. I would think he starts for Florida this year if he stayed. Now he's kind of in a place where there's a lot of cooks in the kitchen out in Lexington. And I mean, look at that roster head to toe. There's all guys who can definitely play large volume minutes. That goes for the whole Kentucky roster. I'm a little concerned with just how those guys are going to mesh together. Someone is going to be unhappy at some point. Aberdeen could be one of those guys. I do think him having the capabilities of playing the point guard spot is going to help him in being able to get more minutes, probably be a 20, 25 plus minute per game guy. I think would probably end up being the best situation for him just with how loaded that roster is. But again, he's choosing the money right now. But I think it is also important to consider that just the opportunities you receive outside of NIL if you stay in a place and kind of build a legacy and build a name for yourself. I mean, if he does at Kentucky, he's just another one of the many, many legends who played in Lexington. He goes to Florida where, okay, outside of Walter Clay in this past year, and you go back to Joakim Noah, Corey Brewer, Al Horford, not many big name players in the history of Florida basketball. If he's able to come back after already winning a national championship, playing a role and being a big minutes guy this next season where he has a really good year, I think that honestly puts him in a better position to become a pro, not just speaking NBA wise, but even going to play overseas. And then throughout his lifetime, fans and people, businesses around Gainesville and in the state of Florida, they're going to remember that. And those opportunities are going to follow him throughout the rest of his life. And I just don't know if he's going to have that same chance to have that if he now in Lexington. So,
No,
I don't know. It's hard to fault a kid for maximizing on the profit they can make in college while they can, but I just think maybe it wasn't the best move for him.
certainly. No, I definitely agree. I do think Aberdeen is still draftable regardless of how you view him, but I just find it crazy
Yeah.
to think about this whole scenario of leaving your natty team to go to really any other team with a bag. It's the equivalent of if Solo Ball last year decided to transfer to Kentucky or Duke or something like
Right.
that. Because yeah, you want a natty, but does that really matter to you? Like, yeah, I in a way I feel like rings aren't really taking the importance that they used to take even last year for reference, because when was there a need to leave your natty team? When was there a need to leave a team that made the national championship or the Final Four? And we're seeing that at a high level that it really concerns me in a way that it almost irks me, because that those players would likely be starting on those teams, would likely have the name recognition and the memory to get a high budget NIL deal, but they choose, the big name brands that will give it a ton of money, but might not have the same level of success. And this is no harm on
Right.
Mark Pope. I like Mark Pope. I like what he's done in Kentucky. It's just that Kentucky is the most expensive and highest budgeted team that has ever existed in college basketball. And they
Yeah.
very easily outbought a likely 30-minute a game starter and possible first round draft pick for the 2026 draft out of the national championship team. Like, where's the loyalty? Where is the loyalty
Yeah.
anymore? It concerns me a lot.
And I definitely like how you talked about how maybe rings don't weigh as much as they used to for players. I don't know that. I mean, of course, there's just always going to be guys who put winning first, but I just don't know that winning is a top priority across the country for players as much as it used to be. I mean, it's hard to fault, these players. Again, not everyone's going to be pro, and you want to be able to make as much money while you can. And the introduction of NIL has brought across opportunities for guys to make life-changing money in college where they might not be able to make it professionally. And at the same time, that does bring about guys who probably are focused more so on their money and personal success than they are in legacy. And it is unfortunate to see the sport kind of move in that way. Of course, there's always going to be guys who put winning first, but it is interesting to see. And I mean, that kind of gets into Chad Baker-Mazara too, who I talked a lot about in that episode, where just everything that went down with Auburn and him signing a deal to return, and then Keyshawn Hall getting 2 million. Chad Baker-Mazara took offense to that. Put a long story short, he basically said, if you can't come up and match that number, get close to it, I'm out of here. And now he's in the portal, and he's talked. I know schools reach out like Arkansas, Ole Miss, Kentucky, and Providence. I've talked a little bit on that episode I made about some of the fits there. I like the Arkansas fit the most, but again, he's gonna have to. There's a buyout that he has to pay to Auburn because he signed that legal contract to return to Auburn and make X amount of money in NIL. And you need to take that into a factor as well. He's probably he's going to have to pay upwards of 600 grand, I believe, probably close to 650. Again, there's teams, yeah, they might be running out of options and maybe prone to throw a bigger bag out there. But at the same time, a lot of teams have already exhausted a lot of their NIL budget. And I just don't know that Baker-Mazara is going to get the money that he wants, which is kind of why brings me to the question I want to ask you. Do you think it could get to a point where he just says it might just be better to go back to Auburn and ask if they would have him back?
Definitely. I mean, he's an Auburn legend regardless of how you view the man. He's been with the team for such a long time now. He's been in college basketball for such a long time. His name is still talked about today. It's kind of crazy he even has eligibility to do this stuff, but
right.
He's worked his way to the Final Four from his original JUCO phase to start off his career. I do think that, if anything, it should be better if he stays at Auburn. Keep the tradition, keep the family ties. There's still a lot of open space on that roster, and he can go well. I think he'd work really good with Elijah Freeman. Having that former non-D1 experience, I think that really kind of builds a community. And Baker-Mazara does have those places with him, but he's very loose. It's hard to tell what he's going to do and what he wants to do, and emotions can definitely get to him. I think that's probably a big reason why he transferred and why he's asking for so much. And he is a great guard. He's one of the best 4-stars that's still left in the transfer portal for tracking star ratings like that. Regardless, he's still one of the best players. I just don't really know where he fits because his personality is so hard to fit in anywhere but a school like Auburn. Like, it has to be a school of dogs.
Right.
He really has to go to a school of complete dogs in that locker room if he's going to fit in. And I guess he's probably the best other option, but do you really want to go to another SEC school? I don't really understand why or where he'd fit in. I don't know if he'd fit in the Big East either. I think there's maybe a couple places where he fit in with a dog, like he'd have that mentality, but it might just be him. So,
yeah.
Like, if I were him, I would stay at Auburn. Take the pay cut if you nearly need to. Yeah. There's still a natty that you can collect before you graduate. I definitely think there is.
Yeah, I mean, I just think he needs to just come out and say, hey, I kind of got a little bit ahead of myself. Ask Bruce Pearl to have him back because, I mean, he fits there. He works well with Bruce Pearl. Bruce Pearl is very understanding of his character. Bruce Pearl had a great quote, basically sum it up, said he trusts Baker-Mazara no matter what baggage might come with him kind of being a little bit of a psycho. And yeah, it's tough to find schools where he's going to fit because you're bringing in a really different personality than what you're going to find across most players around the sport. In terms of schools where I could see the fit, I mean, I like Arkansas just because he'll bring a lot of veteran leadership to a team that's going to be really young next year. Of course, Cal always brings in those highly touted freshmen. Ole Miss, I think, could also be a good landing spot. Like I mentioned, Chris Beard really tends to just kind of let his players play. And no matter what kind of comes with them, I think definitely he could mesh well with Storr. And if they get Haggerty too, then that's a really dangerous team with between those three players. But yeah, I mean, I honestly think the best option for him is just to go back to Auburn at this point. Listen, you're probably not going to be making what you want NIL-wise. And I do feel that, yeah, you probably should be making more considering what Keyshawn Hall got, someone who's just stepping into the program as opposed to you, who would have been a third-year returning player. But again, that kind of goes back to the opportunities. He's already built a name for himself in Auburn, outside of NIL. I'm sure, for the rest of his life, he's going to have businesses surrounding the Auburn program in, their college town, always reaching out to him. And they're going to follow him for the rest of his life. So yeah, you might want to make the biggest bag now, but I do think coming back to Auburn does give him also the best chance to prove himself to be a pro.
Certainly, without a doubt. I don't really know what he's going to go for. Like I said before, he's a loose caboose. He could really just choose any school he wants and be fine with it. But I think for just the sake of Auburn fans and for everything in general, I do hope he stays. I haven't grown on him
me
much,
too.
But he plays so well, and he has the name recognition, as I said before. he would just do good for the sport as a whole if he stayed. And if he went somewhere else, I do hope he gets a bag. I do hope he gets a starting role because he is that type of guy. I just don't know how it's panning out. And we have to see. We really have to see what he does. But this is, I guess, the segue I'm kind of getting as more of a question, not on rumors, but on just an overview of this portal class as a whole. How do you feel about this? Because this is the most stacked portal we have ever seen and may see for quite some time. There were 12 5-stars and 284 stars if you're tracking from 247, which is probably the best place to track for transfer portals and everything like that. Like, personally, for me, I do enjoy the portal class. This is the largest amount of players that's ever entered the portal. We're kind of seeing how it's going to work for the next few years. Obviously, as we said in previous episodes, there needs to be regulation. Haggerty should not be asking for $4 million. Rob Wright shouldn't be getting $3.5 million. That's pretty simple. But on top of that, though, I feel like the accumulation of talent isn't as big as we expected. If you want to go into 247 and check for yourself, the top 10 transfer rankings have teams like Washington, LSU get in the top 10. These are not like well-known Power 5 schools that are known for this stuff. There's a lot of diversity. So if I can put that out there, at least the portal is showing that anybody can go anywhere, and it works for any school, even some mid-majors.
Yeah. And I mean, just in terms of how I feel about this portal cycle this year, like you mentioned, there were 12 5-stars. What was the number? 284 stars.
Yeah.
In terms of how these players in the portal are ranked. Last year, I don't believe there was a single 5-star. Josh told me. And yeah, I mean, we're kind of starting to see big name. This is really the first year where we're seeing really, really big name players hit the portal and end up in new schools. And last year kind of start to see the beginnings of it starting to get out of hand money wise, like Great Osibor getting $2 million from Washington. I feel like that was the first kind of announcement about a player making that much. Coleman Hawkins was also in that upper tier of how much their guys were making across the country. But now you're seeing it a lot more. I mean, there's more and more players across the country. I mean, if you're a starter on a Power 5 team, there's a good chance you're making upwards of $1 million. And it really is crazy to see. I definitely think head to toe, this transfer class, is a lot more talented than last year's. But again, there's still a lot of questions and a lot of baggage which follow some of these guys in the portal. But like you mentioned, it does help with the parity across the sport. I mean, BYU's in a position now where they could be a potential top 5 preseason team, maybe top 3. And you're seeing schools that have never really had the abilities to be in that upper tier of the country in college basketball get to that point just because of what NIL has done for the sport.
Yeah, no, I mean, we hit the point perfectly on that. I really do feel that this is probably a sign to come. I feel like this year is the start of many years until NCAA really does something about it, which God knows when, but hopefully they do, on just regulation, on portal changes and just whatnot, because this is just an insane amount of player opportunities. I have no clue how else to describe the just insanity. Like this feels almost at the equivalent of an NBA free agency with the amount of drops and changes and loops. Like, we don't really know. And we're past the date of portal recurrences. We still don't fully know how everything's going to shape up. There's still almost 50 4-stars up. There's like 3 true 5-stars that are still in the portal. Everything could really change from just those little things. We have really just no clue on even like the things like sleepers, like we said before. So a lot of focus, I think, on college basketball nowadays. No offense to coaching changes, to freshmen, to returning guys, but the big talk right now is the portal. I think that's the biggest thing in college basketball this year and probably for the next ensuing years. And that's why we're focusing on it so much. And we're going to keep focusing on it too until the portal truly ends in June.
Right. Yeah. Like you just said, we're going to continue to monitor the situations surrounding a lot of players. There's so many guys who, like we talked about, are still in the portal that are really talented. I mean, just throw some names we didn't even talk about: Jameer Watkins, Andre Stojakovic. I mean, those 2 guys are going to be big time additions to whatever program they end up at. But yeah, like, we're going to continue to monitor where guys end up, and we'll try to put out as much content as we can regarding that. But I think that pretty much takes care of everything we had for you guys in terms of this episode today. Just want to give a little bit of a kind of progressive update on how the portal is going, just with transfers and kind of the situation surrounding some players and who's kind of won, who's lost this portal process so far. But Again, please engage with our videos in any way you can. It really does help at the end of the day in being able to help with YouTube's algorithm. But until the next episode we put out to you guys, we'll see you all next time.